Don't think drugs are a problem? Wait till you hear some of these figures. Education Today starts now.
Welcome to Education Today. I'm John Zish from the Armstrong School District. Today we're going to look at an anti-drug program that really hits home and will be of use to parents, grandparents, and anyone else who's concerned about stopping the spread of drug addiction among our youth. This fall in the Armstrong School District, more than 250 teachers in grades 7 through 12 are getting this special training from the Pennsylvania State Police, and we're very pleased to be sharing part of it with you today. To talk more about this, we have Lieutenant Scott Neal of the Pennsylvania State Police. Welcome to the show, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, John.
Would you please tell us briefly about yourself and your career in law enforcement?
Sure. Currently, I am the Criminal Investigations Section Commander for the Pennsylvania State Police out of Troop D, Butler. As part of my duties is, well, all my duties are, I have oversight, command oversight of all the criminal investigative functions for the Pennsylvania State Police within Troop D, which is 5 counties: Armstrong, Butler, Beaver, Mercer, and Lawrence. That includes criminal investigators, vice narcotics operations, forensic services, computer crime, intelligence unit is the part of the job that I oversee. I've been with the State Police now for 20 years. I spent a great deal of that time in the criminal investigative function, and during that time there really hasn't been much I haven't seen.
I can imagine. We're very lucky to have you with us today, and thanks for giving up your time.
I'm glad to be here.
Sure. Well, we have an important message to share with you, and I was wondering if you would please take us through the presentation that you're sharing this fall with Armstrong School District secondary teachers.
Sure. I was asked to put together a program basically that gives an overview of the general types of drugs we see in the area today, their effects they can have on people, signs and symptoms to look for of people who are using them, as well as, and I threw some stuff in here that would make it easier to identify what the drugs are, their packaging, what they look like when they're packaged. So that's what I have here. And I'm just going to go through it briefly here, as quick as I can. First of all, I'm going to start out with a few statistics that I don't like to bore anyone with the statistics, but I think some of these are important.
Put it in perspective.
Yeah.
Sure.
And these numbers come from the National Highway Transportation and Safety Administration. And they say that 40 to 50 million Americans today are regularly using drugs other than alcohol. About 20 million are using marijuana, 8 to 20 million cocaine, 6 million prescription drugs, 1 million hallucinogens, and they're saying 500,000 heroin. These statistics are a little bit dated. The 500,000 on heroin I don't believe is accurate anymore. I think it's much more than that. Heroin has made a huge comeback over the last 5 to 10 years. So I think the heroin usage is much more than what they're stating even here. That brings us to what are the main drugs we're seeing in our area today, and they are basically heroin, cocaine, marijuana, and the clandestine manufacture and use of methamphetamine. The last thing there, the manufacture of methamphetamine, we haven't seen a lot of yet, but it's coming this way, and I'm just going to touch on it briefly. To throw some more numbers at you and just put some of this in perspective about what young people are doing, during the past 12 months, high school seniors, when you're talking just about high school seniors, 85% have drank alcohol, 40% have smoked marijuana, 25% have used some kind of stimulant other than cocaine, 10% have used cocaine, and 10% have used hallucinogens or tranquilizers, or both. 5% have used barbiturates. Only about 5 to 10% haven't used anything at all.
Those are some scary numbers. We all knew it was a big problem, but
yeah, very scary number.
How big it is.
Very scary numbers. To just go through some of the classes of drugs we have out there, we have central nervous system depressants, which are your alcohol, barbiturates, Valium, chlorohydrate. We have your central nervous stimulants, which include cocaine, amphetamines, and methamphetamines. We have hallucinogens, which fortunately not that they don't exist, but we don't see a lot of hallucinogens in the area, which would be LSD, peyote. We never see any peyote. Occasionally some LSD comes up. We do have a little bit of ecstasy around. And these are hallucinogens, which anyone who knows anything about the effects of hallucinogens, people just see things that aren't there. They're hallucinating. It's called a synesthesia, or a transposition of senses, where people under the influence of hallucinogens may say things like they're seeing sounds or hearing colors, things along that line. Phencyclidine, PCP, most people have heard of. PCP, extremely dangerous drug, extremely dangerous drug. We fortunately don't see hardly any PCP around, not that it doesn't exist. It's just not a real prevalent drug. Ketamine, which is along that lines. Ketamine is what we call a club drug, which is in the lines with ecstasy and GHB, which many people have heard of, which is called a date rape drug. Ketamine is a large animal tranquilizer, believe it or not, and people will actually steal it from veterinarians' offices and use it to ingest. And it's a very dangerous drug also. Narcotic analgesics, which are basically painkillers. Anybody who's had any surgical procedures or broken bones, chances are you've had some type of painkiller given to you, morphine, Demerol, anything like that. That's what a narcotic analgesic is, and that's the class that heroin falls under. Highly addictive drugs, very highly addictive drugs. Inhalants, which are volatile solvents, your glues, your paints that have the noxious odors to them. That happens a lot in the younger kids. We don't see a lot of it, fortunately, but it is out there, and it's readily available stuff, which makes it more difficult. But fortunately, we don't have a large problem with inhalants that we know of. And the age-old cannabis, which is your marijuana, which has been around forever, continues to be around. It's a huge drug. We see a lot of marijuana, have forever. And just to go through some of the effects, now when I put this program together, I always make it clear to the teachers that you're not going to be what we call a drug recognition expert after seeing or hearing this program, which is somebody who can sit down and observe an individual. We have people who are trained to that. It's a 2-week training course. It's a very intense training course. They can observe somebody and give a pretty good opinion of what exact drug they're under the influence of. This will obviously not do that, but it'll give you a few indicators to look for of somebody who may or may not be under the influence of alcohol. For instance, cannabis influence, which is your marijuana. Those people generally have very bloodshot eyes. You'll be able to pronounce see the veins in the eyeballs will be very pronounced. If they're really high, sometimes they'll have body tremors. An odor of marijuana, which if you've never smelled marijuana, it's a very, very noxious, it's a very strong, pungent odor. It could be disoriented, relaxed inhibitions, difficulty in dividing attention, can't perform more than one task at a time. And then we have heroin. And some of the signs, indicators of heroin use, first of all, the pupils are going to be severely constricted. Everyone knows when your pupils are operating properly, when you're in bright lights, they'll constrict, and when you're in dark areas, they'll dilate to let the most light in. People under the influence of heroin will have their pupils severely constricted. Even when they're in a dark area, the pupils will be very small. They'll give the appearance of being what we call on the nod, is that their head will bob. It looks like they're having a difficult time staying awake. Eyelids will be droopy. Their mouth will be dry. They'll itch their face a lot around their nose and their mouth. It just causes a facial itching. And they may have possible puncture marks, or what we call track marks, from where they were injecting the drug. However, a lot of people who are on heroin are very good at hiding their track marks.
Do you know what causes the nodding?
It's the effect of the drug. If you've ever had a painkiller given to you, it just makes you kind of tired and lethargic.
Oh, okay.
And
so they are actually sleepy.
Yes, they are sleepy. And it's a very euphoric feeling, and they actually get sleepy. And when they have enough of it in them, especially after they first ingested it, they'll look like they're having a difficult time staying awake. Okay. And I also have some pictures here of heroin, because most people wouldn't recognize what heroin looks like in its packaged form. Heroin is packaged in small glassine packets. They're normally about 1 inch square or a rectangle. They're not very big. Each, we call them bag. Each bag, each individual bag will carry anywhere from 20 to 50 milligrams of heroin, depending on how it is, and it will have a stamp on it. A stamp on the outside. When I mean a stamp, it'll have some type of label on it. This is what the drug dealers do to label their drugs so people can tell where they got their drugs from, so that if they want more, they can go back to it. Unfortunately, the drug dealers change their labels on a regular basis, so it's very difficult to trace them. But you know, the heroin, and I have some pictures here of some empty bags, what it would look like. And if you saw them around your home or around school, it might just look like scraps of paper, but if you look closely, or you know, it gives you an idea of what an empty bag of heroin would look like. And also here we have some full packaged heroin. Heroin is sold, you know, by the bag, and then what they'll do a lot of times, they'll wrap 10 bags up together, which is called a bundle, and then 5 bundles is called a brick. So you have 50 bags of heroin in a brick. And heroin is ingested in mainly 2 ways. You can either be snorted or injected. Like I say, the preferred method by most addicts is injection. However, a lot of people, especially young people, will start out snorting it because they don't think it's as bad snorting as it is injecting it. Yeah. And almost always they move up to, you know, direct injection. And I have a picture here of what 5 bricks of heroin will look like packaged together. That's 250 bags. We'll go into cocaine here. Cocaine is a stimulant, and there are 2 types of cocaine. We see powdered cocaine and crack cocaine. Crack cocaine is a very purified form. It's gone through a cooking process, and it looks like small rocks when it's done. Either white, cocaine is white powder, as is heroin is generally white powder. And crack cocaine will either be white, sometimes might have a yellowish tint to it from the process it's gone through. It's the opposite, as far as the pupils go, is the opposite of heroin. The pupils are going to be dilated for people on cocaine. And they might be restless, they're going to have a lot of energy, anxiety, grinding their teeth, things like that. I have some pictures here of how cocaine is packaged. The most common method is they use plastic baggies. They'll put it in the corner of the bag, snip the corner off, tie it up, and that's how it's packaged. Crack cocaine, plastic bags also. Just looks like little powdered rocks. There's some pictures of crack pipes. Crack is smoked in crack pipes. Cocaine is generally snorted through the nostrils. It can be injected, but it's not a very common method of doing it. And okay.
Well, what I'll do now is, I understand we have to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll talk more about your program, and specifically methamphetamines. We'll be right back from Armstrong School District's Education Today. My guest is Lieutenant Scott Neal from the Pennsylvania State Police. Stay with us.
Will you be spending Thanksgiving Day alone?
Is your family unable to afford a Thanksgiving dinner?
Are you unable to prepare a traditional Thanksgiving dinner?
Then please join us for a free Thanksgiving luncheon for Armstrong County residents. This year it will be Thursday, November 23rd. The time from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. The location, the Katanning Junior High School.
The Armstrong School District Foundation and the Student Service Learning Clubs are hosting this Thanksgiving luncheon for the less fortunate in Armstrong County.
Armstrong School District students, staff, teachers, and administrators will serve as volunteers at the dinner. There will be roasted turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, gravy, vegetables, and of course, cranberries.
Interested in coming? Call 724-763-5214. Again, that number is 724-763-5214.
Special arrangements may be available for those needing transportation, but you must call by November 17th.
Unfortunately, we can't accommodate volunteers from the community. However, if you really want to help, we need pies. Pumpkin pies, cherry pies, you name it.
We hope to see you there on Thanksgiving Day at Katanning Junior High School.
Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Health and Human Services at IUP. Compassion. Professionalism. A thorough grounding in technology. We'll prepare you for thousands of exciting jobs and rewarding careers. Quality. Affordability. Excellence. Indiana University of Pennsylvania. The perfect fit.
Welcome back to Armstrong School District's Education Today. I'm John Zish with the Armstrong School District. My guest is Lieutenant Scott Neal of the Pennsylvania State Police. Well, Scott, before the break we were talking a little bit about the presentation you're giving to all secondary teachers in the Armstrong School District. It's a drug awareness presentation, and I was wondering if you would please wrap that up for us with
Sure.
where you left off.
Yes, the last thing I just want to touch on real quick is because it's not become a major problem for us yet, is the manufacture of methamphetamine. The clandestine manufacture of methamphetamine is kind of a phenomenon that started on the West Coast and has moved east. Fortunately, to this point in Pennsylvania, the manufacturing part of it is a problem in the northwest corner right now. Erie, Crawford, Venango, Warren counties, they've had a lot of what we call labs up there. We haven't had the labs in this part of the state yet. Although we do have the final product, we have some methamphetamine, but not a lot of it. The thing that's unique about methamphetamine and manufacture of methamphetamine is it can be manufactured using items that you can buy at Walmart. And here's a listing of items. I'm not going to go through them all and name them individually, but each one can be bought at a local Walmart, and if you know somebody who knows how to cook it, there are a couple different methods to do it, and it can be cooked up at home. These labs are extremely toxic, extremely dangerous, and the final product, methamphetamine, is a highly addictive stimulant that really messes people up. So that's it in a nutshell. I just want to say that the two biggest problems we're fighting right now, if I had to say the two biggest, is heroin and crack cocaine. Highly addictive drugs that devastate the people who use them and their families. And although the other drugs I've mentioned we definitely have and are definitely a big problem, but the two biggest ones, if I had to say right now, are crack cocaine and heroin.
Okay. Well, I sure appreciate you taking us through your presentation. I understand it normally takes about 40 minutes when you give it to our teachers, but appreciate you abbreviating it for our purposes. And when you give this presentation to the teachers this fall, what are you hoping they'll gain from it, or how do you hope they'll use the information you're sharing?
Well, like I tell the teachers whenever I start out, the reason I do this is because I'm a huge proponent of education. Obviously, for my career, I'm an enforcement end, and generally, I'm there at the end result of what drug use does. And a lot of my job, probably 90% of my job as far as criminal investigations go, can be associated with drugs in one way or another. So anything I can do to help educate people in the drugs and what to look for and recognize, I'm willing to do that. And what I want to ask the teachers to get out of it is just some of the signs and symptoms to look for if they have a student that they think may be under the influence. I want to show them some of the packaging, what the drugs actually look like. A lot of them, I'm sure, have never seen the harder drugs, especially the cocaine or heroin. Just so they can recognize it, and if they see a student, something fall out of their pocket or an open purse or something, they can recognize what they're looking at and get the students some help that they need before it gets too late.
Very good. Well, now here's a question society is struggling with, and if you don't have the answer, you're probably in good company, because I don't know if anyone does, but what is it that leads a person to actually start experimenting with drugs? And then part B of the question is what can we do to stop this American epidemic of drug addiction?
You're
Where
right.
does it all start and where does it end?
That's the million-dollar question. I don't know, and I certainly don't have all the answers. I can speculate. I think some people don't have the greatest lives to begin with, and they turn to drugs for whatever reason because it makes them feel better. And I think a big problem is you have that "it can't happen to me" attitude. You have young people out there, kids, students, high school, junior high, who come into contact with somebody who has access to these drugs, and they think, well, I'm going to try it once or twice just to see, because it can't happen to me. I can control it. I can become addicted. And these drugs, especially the heroines and the cocaines and the crack cocaines and the methamphetamines, are just so highly addictive that before they know it, they're in it way over their heads. And what can we do about it? That's why I'm a big proponent of education. Education at the lowest levels. Talk to these kids. Tell them, there is no such thing as just trying it one time or recreational drug use. They're either a user or they're not a user, and it's better, much better to not even try it at all, ever.
And isn't it true that if you snort heroin once, that can be addictive? It's a myth that kids believe that it's not, but
it certainly can be. Like I said, it's a very powerful drug. And I always tell people in these classes, if you ever had surgery or a broken bone, you've ever had a shot of Demerol or morphine, you know what the effects are, and that's why you're in extreme pain. That's what it's there for. And it's very easy to really like that feeling, especially if you're taking it for recreational use and there's no pain. You know, it's not a prescribed medication for pain. And yes, it can. They love that. You know, they take it one time, they feel great, they have no problems anymore, and next thing you know, they try it again and again and again.
Well, now what's the next step in this? What are some of the devastating effects that can happen to the drug user and their families?
Well, this is the part I've seen way too much of. I've had occasion to review and be on scene for numerous drug overdose deaths, and that's the end result of a lot of these cases as they die. Is the user ends up taking too much and dies. Heroin, for example, heroin's a very tricky drug. One time, I was involved in two different investigations where the levels of the drug were extremely different in both of the victims. And we asked the pathologist about that, and he told us that heroin is so unpredictable that the person can take the same amount 10 times and be fine with it. They take that same amount the 11th time, it'll kill them. They're very dangerous drugs, and I forgot the question now.
Well, I was just asking about the tragic effects that can happen to
Yes.
families.
And the problem is these people who get addicted to these drugs, that's all they crave and that's all they want, and they'll do anything they can to get it, and that includes stealing from their families, and you know, disappearing, and just the anguish it causes, you know, your families, your mother, father, wife, husband, whatever the case may be, your kids. It's just it's devastating, and it's just, you know, something everyone should see, but nobody probably ever wants to see.
Right. Well, it's hopefully what this program will do, and more of the other educational programs that you're doing, that we can somehow fight back against this drug culture that's got 50 million Americans apparently in its grip.
Unfortunately, it's a war we're losing, I think, but we try and win it one battle at a time and just do what we can do.
How about, what is the connection between drugs and the vast majority of crimes that you investigate?
Well, the thing of it is, and I don't have any scientific studies on this, I just have about 20 years of experience, is that by and large, most of the people, most of the crimes that we investigate and most of the people we arrest and somehow are connected with drugs. They're drug users, they committed the crime, especially property crimes, thefts, burglaries, or stealing stuff. They do this to support their habit because they want drugs. Or it's a situation where they're spending so much of their legitimate money on their drug habit, they need to supplement it by committing crimes. So it all connects some way or another to most of the crimes that we investigate out there. There's some type of drug involved in just about everything.
Now, of the drugs we see today, you mentioned heroin and crack cocaine. Would they be considered the worst that you can get into, or is there like a line of bad and extremely bad?
I classify drugs as bad and very bad, I guess you could say, and absolutely horrible, I guess. There is no good drug. You get into I would classify something like PCP as being absolute bottom horrible. It's about the worst thing you could ever get into because people on PCP just do crazy things. Partial step above that is heroin and cocaine, and they are the worst drugs that we deal with on a constant basis because of their addictive nature, because of the cravings that the addicts have for it. They'll do anything for it. You know, people will steal, get into prostitution, whatever they can do to get enough money to get their next fix. And then, you know, you have your marijuanas, which is a bad drug. It's a highly addictive drug, but it's not on the addictive level as heroin or cocaine. But that's not to say by any stretch of the imagination it's a good drug or an acceptable drug. It can be just as devastating as any other ones.
And in many cases, a gateway to marijuana can be a gateway to some of the higher drugs.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, you touched on this a little bit, but I was wondering if you could share some specific experiences you've had where there's been tragic endings, maybe from your career in investigations of drug-related incidents.
I guess one of the ones that hit me the most was I was involved in investigations of a couple homicides where two girls were killed. The girls were addicted to crack cocaine, and they had gotten into prostitution as a result of it, And that's how they ultimately met their demise, through one of their customers. And through the investigation, we had to make contact with a lot of the other local prostitutes. And when we did that, we went and we looked up in their driver's license. In order for us to be able to identify these girls, we knew their names, we just didn't put their faces to their names. We looked up their driver's license photos through the PennDOT files, which we have access to. So we got these driver's license photos, these girls who were 16 years old when they had their driver's license taken. Now these girls are in their late teens, early 20s. Amazingly, it was amazingly tragic, I guess you could say, when we found these girls and we had their picture of what they looked like when they were 16, and many of them were beautiful, beautiful young girls, and now they're only 3 or 4 or 5 years older than that, and they look like they've aged 30 years. And mainly because, and that was mainly crack cocaine, was the situation over there. And that's the situation. These girls got into crack cocaine. They'd do anything for the next fix. They turned to prostitution. 2 of them ended up dead.
Yeah, that's really terrible. Well, I was wondering if you had any other advice for our parents or grandparents watching, or anything else to share for the benefit of the viewers?
Other than keep an eye on your kids, talk to your kids, find out where they're going, who they're being with. Don't be afraid to be nosy. You got to respect your kids' privacy, but by the same token, if you suspect something, take a look around. Hopefully you won't be shocked by what you find. Kids, adolescents go through a lot of stuff when they're growing up, but just don't stick your head in the sand, I guess you could say.
Very good. Well, that's our show for today. I'd like to thank my guest, Lieutenant Scott Neal of the Pennsylvania State Police, who created this informative presentation about the enemy we're all facing, the drug culture. I'd also like to thank the TV students of Fort City High School, led by Mrs. Barb Keller. They were our film crew today and did a great job. Please join us again next week for another look at the Armstrong School District. Visit our website for updated information about the district, and have a great week.
Hello, I'm Brianna Jack from Ford City High School, and this is a look at what's going on around the Armstrong School District. Pennsylvania State Police teams of officers and drug-sniffing dogs found no illegal drugs during a coordinated search of all 5 Armstrong School District secondary schools on Wednesday, September 13th. State police from Kittanning and other state police stations from across the state participated. In all, state police searched a total of 2,779 lockers covering Elderton Junior Senior High School, Ford City Junior Senior High School, Kittanning Junior High School, Kittanning Senior High School, and Weshamokin Junior Senior High School. This is a stepped-up effort to address concern about the use of illegal drugs by our students, said Dr. Frank Garatano, Assistant Student Superintendent, Secondary Education and District Programs. We conducted the search out of our concern for our students and their families. Countrywide, there have been an increasing number of drug prosecutions and drug overdoses. This search was part of Armstrong School District's continued efforts to help students make good decisions regarding drugs and alcohol, Dr. Garatano said. Today's coordinated search was just one part of Armstrong School District's overall anti-drug efforts. Well, that's all for now. I'm Brianna Jack from Ford City High School. Keep watching.